Hi there. My name is Kristen Tinch, and if you're watching this, you're either at KRA and you are so loyal to come to my presentation and watch me just give a pre-recorded video that you could watch anywhere. So thank you for being here. It's kind of depressing to imagine me just like talking to an empty room. But if not, it's also fun if you're watching this at home in comfort times. I don't intend to talk for an entire hour because that would be a really long video. And ideally, I would want to interact with you. But I do just want to share with you some things that I've learned in the last year. I think we've all learned so many things, good and bad. But these are all really positive things that I feel like came out of my COVID teaching experience and then also just out of the last 9 years, which is what I've been doing. So I started my career as a Spanish teacher. I'm really excited about being an English teacher, which I've been doing for the last 4 years. And so I just have some things that I've been learning. I wish I could like talk with you in person and have a real conversation. So what I'm going to be sharing with you guys today is how I've been working really hard to move my students beyond 5 paragraph essays. So if you teach high schoolers or if you teach middle schoolers, maybe even if you're teaching in elementary or primary, you know this tendency to kind of work within a formula. So I'm going to talk about some ways that I use the formula and then ways that I'm trying to get kids to move past it. So I'm just going to say a few things about myself, introduce myself, how I use 5 paragraph essays, and then I know my little pictures here, so I'll move me up, and then moving beyond them. So first, I am really bummed that I'm not with you guys, but it's for a good reason. I'll share in a little bit. But I am new to KRA. I got introduced through Adolescent Literacy Project, which I'll share a little bit more about in a second. But just some things about me. I'm teaching seniors. That's exclusively what I teach. I teach 3 different levels. I teach AP Literature, which is super fun. I teach in something called the college cohort, which is really like a middle group. It's students who are college bound, but perhaps not college ready, or who have elected to take sort of a college prep course. And then I teach a good old general course. And all 3 of those are so fun in different ways. You guys know exactly what I'm talking about. Just like different challenges and across all the levels. And so a year ago, actually was sitting in this seat and I was even wearing this shirt, which is so funny to me. I presented my thesis for my literacy degree. I'm so happy and proud of that work, which was on culturally responsive teaching and how it intersects with 21st century literacy skills. So that was such a good time. And then now I'm working on an MA in English so that I can be dual credit certified since I'm working with seniors. And both of those were through WKU. So I got here through Adolescent Literacy Project. I actually just included these slides in case you're just like, I would like to create a website with my students. So this was something I shared as part of my ALP project last year, and it was so successful. So I just want to share as much as I can. So there's that if you'd like to. And then I got the grant for community literacy through KRA, and I'm so thankful for the opportunity. I'm so excited for what's going on now. And again, you can just stay tuned if you'd like. But the reason I'm not going to be with you guys today, and I feel like this is a really long intro, so I am in Bowling Green at JONESVILLE Academy on the weekends, every other Saturday at WKU. There is an academy for Black, African American, Hispanic, Latino, and then mixed race young men. These are actually 2 of my colleagues' sons, and they're just so dang cute. And so it's obviously a great opportunity, and I had to be in person for that. So sorry to not be with you, but there's JONESVILLE if you'd like to know some more about it. So I feel like I am the kind of person who likes teaching because I like problem solving. I'm kind of exhausted from problem solving at the moment, so maybe you are too. But my current crisis actually has nothing to do with these like 2 really lovely people, but they're just like such a good example of what I'm talking about. So I am obviously super immersed in public school. I went to public school. I'm a first generation college student. I teach in a super diverse school that has not only racial and linguistic diversity, but lots of socioeconomic diversity. And so I remember student teaching and just being so taken by how gritty school was compared to like the bubble of academia. And I loved it, right? That's what I love about public school. And so just as an example, this is Laura Beth and Jason Hayes. They're from Elizabethtown. They presented yesterday, Friday, about trauma-informed instruction and being a trauma-informed educator. And like, I'm just so pleased with the direction that public school is heading. And then I'm also like very present on a college campus, right? So I have members of my immediate family who are getting an undergraduate degree at the moment. I'm getting a master's degree. And I just read this book, which I would highly recommend, by Zadie Smith, called On Beauty. And it's a campus novel, takes place on a college campus. And it is, I think, a criticism of academics, right? As this sort of the ivory tower has certain people who are insiders, certain people who are outsiders. And here's a quote from a character who is definitely an outsider. So it takes place in Boston. This character, his name is Carl. He's a Black man who lives in Roxbury, and he's a street poet, very talented, very intellectual, but not a lot of opportunity. And here's what he says: "The future is another country, man, and I still ain't got a passport." And this resonated so deeply with me as a first-generation college student. It resonates with me as a teacher of students who are first-generation college students, or who also, for whatever reason, lack opportunities or have all the opportunities in the world, but maybe don't have all the skills that they need to be successful on a college campus. And so everything I'm doing at the moment in my professional life is to solve this problem, right? How do we move from the loving, caring bubble of public K-12 school onto a college campus? And so I'm going to share with you something that I think is working. And it starts with a formula and moves on. So if I were there in person, I would want you to talk about this, but I just want you to think about it right now. You don't have to like talk at the screen. What kind of writing formulas or formats do you teach students, and why? So just as an example, 5-paragraph essays. I feel like I was taught them, and that teachers in my building use 5-paragraph essays because it kind of makes it more simplistic. It's a super complex process, makes it more simplistic. So just think, what are some formulas or formats that you're teaching in your class at the moment, whatever level, and then why do you teach that? So there's some really common ones. So I mentioned the 5-paragraph essay. I've actually never explicitly taught that. It's taught in younger levels in my building, but I've obviously assigned them and expected my students to be able to do them. I use another formula almost every day in class. It's called the complexity formula. So if you're familiar with the 11-12 band of standards, they're really similar to the middle school standards, except like lots of times just the word complex is added. And so this is really helpful. I can just say, hey, like we're going to identify a complex theme or identify the complexity of this character. And this is just a way for students to see like, oh, there's positive and negative, and then there's layers to them. And so I've gotten a lot of success with that. If you're familiar with They Say, I Say, it's the subtitle is The Moves That Matter in Academic Writing. It's such a good book. It's linked in the speaker notes here. But basically it gives like little templates. So although blank argues blank, I maintain that blank. So it just gives students academic language. And I'm trying everything I can to bridge that gap between public school and university. And so I really like giving my students like actual tools. And then this is summary. I've seen this in elementary classrooms. Somebody wanted, but so. And so I'm sure that we are all familiar with these formulas. We rely on them because they make a really complex process really simple for our students. So I don't think that there's anything wrong with any of these, right? But again, I'm trying to move my students towards more independent thinking, towards doing their own analysis, towards using their own language, not just words that I've given them. And so again, rather than just using a template as like, hey, this is the desired outcome, this is what I want you to do, using it as a launch pad to get students to think in a different way. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about an assignment that I did this year called the last 5-paragraph essay. And so the whole thing is that students are not going to write any more 5-paragraph essays ever again after this one. Now, that's probably not true because I was assigned 5-paragraph essays as a college student. There may be other teachers in the building who assign them. But for this class, like the first essay we write is the last 5-paragraph essay of their high school English career. So there's a couple ways that this is useful. So first of all, it was a great pre-assessment just to see where are they with their writing. Do they know what MLA formatting is? Which they did, which made me happy. Do they understand how to set up a paragraph, right? Paragraph structure. Where are they grammatically? And also just to get to know them a little bit, all of the paragraphs had something to do with themselves. It's also a great control essay. So like as we're experimenting as writers and growing as writers throughout the year, this is just a great like place to start. We can all kind of see like, oh yeah, look what I did at the beginning. That was so formulaic, wasn't a big risk taker. I just sort of like filled in the blanks. And so to be honest with you, this was very much like the kind of writing I have been teaching like in my career, because it was very much how I was taught, not necessarily in a university setting, but in high school, our teacher just sort of gave us these formulas and we just filled in the blanks. And so again, trying to move beyond that, move past that. So just getting it over with in the beginning is really nice. In our building, it's really common for teachers to use holistic writing rubrics. And I don't really have a problem with holistic writing rubrics. Obviously, I'm an AP teacher. That is a huge part of the AP exam is holistic writing rubrics, and where we're looking at the writing as a whole, right, and kind of looking at broad categories. And so I've really gotten into using standards-based rubrics in the last year, just because I crave a real measure of learning, right? I want to see, like, did they master the specific skill? So I have some examples. If you're not really sure what I'm talking about, or you may look at it and be like, hey, Kristen, you could actually do this way better. And I'm very open to that too, because I'm at the point where I want to do my job really well. So any feedback you have at any point, I'm just excited to hear. Okay, so the very first day this year, I started with a task rotation, which you can click on that later if you'd like. If you're just really curious what I do on the first day, you can see that. But the last of the 4 tasks is to read an excerpt from a really excellent book that I highly recommend called Why They Can't Write by John Warner. And so this book is written by a professor who has taught all levels of writing, and has just done a lot of thinking and research about why high school writing instruction is not successful for students. And so this actually influenced a lot of my thinking. And so I just I've linked the excerpt, but I'm going to go ahead and show you. Oopsie, let me back it up. Pre-writing. So you can just see like what my prompt was. And so the general prompt was, what does Miss Tinch need to know about me? So basically they read the excerpt, they did some thinking about it. There's some sort of like rules. But I gave them exactly what to put in each body paragraph. Again, I don't know them that well. They don't know me. I will not do this at any point again, tell them what to put in each paragraph. But at this point, I want to just see like how can they work within the sandbox, right? And so the first body paragraph, their piece of evidence that they're going to use to make a claim about themselves is a quote from some sort of text. So it could be book, movie, TV show, song. The next one is a photo of themselves it has to be them. They have to be fully clothed, obviously. And then what does the photo say about you? Like what claim can you make using that evidence? And then finally, this was really fun to read what a relative or close friend would say about them. And then they build a claim and then use that as evidence. And so this has done a couple things for me as a writing teacher. First of all, obviously I'm getting to know them. I need to know about them. And the older I get, the less sense they make to me. So it's really helpful to kind of get this is the handbook to me. Like, this is what's important to me. This is what I value. So I really appreciate the kind of relationship building part of it. The second thing that this does for me is it gives me an idea of, do you know what claim evidence commentary is, or claim evidence reasoning, or point evidence discussion? Do you understand paragraph structure? And then the third thing it's doing is, do you know how to integrate evidence, right? Do you just like pop your quote in there and then call it a day? Or do you know how to do that more accurately in a much more advanced way that's more closer to college level writing? And so, again, this essay provided so much data for me as I was scoring it. And so speaking of scoring, I'd like to show you the rubric. And so again, this is not necessarily, I would not call this like a very specific rubric, but it gives me an idea. This is on Google Classroom. If you're not using rubrics on Classroom, I just want to say I recommend it. It speeds up my grading. It also keeps me very fair. It keeps like what the expectation is super clear. It's just all kind of housed in one place. And so I gave them a lot of points for MLA because we did do some review activities with MLA. And so I thought, like, let me just give you some credit for learning or knowing what I've taught you. And then my other categories are built across claims, evidence, and commentary, or point evidence discussion, claim evidence reasoning. We all like kind of use different language. But basically, it's very basic writing skill, but something that's super essential for everything else we're going to do in the class this year. So again, that is what I use 5-paragraph essay for. So I also wrote a 5-paragraph essay, which was fun because it was about me and I love talking about me. But he did a couple things for me. I have not ever done this. So last year, my students always said, "Why don't you write the essays with us?" And they were right. And I know this is good practice. I know all about right beside them, that penny kittle. Like I know all that you're supposed to do that. And I've just never done it. So I did it this year. I've done it twice and it has gone so well. It just has created much more of a community of writing. And they see me as sort of an expert, which again, not an expert, but they see me as sort of like, okay, she writes and I've read her writing and I know that she knows what this is like. So it's just kind of up to my credibility. So it also gives me an opportunity to model my writing process. So as we're going through this, obviously I want students to know, like, not everybody writes the same, not everybody goes through the same process, but it gives me a kind of a space to do that. I also let students grade my work, which is really fun, and also kind of hurts sometimes. Just recently, a student said, "Did you like make this purposefully bad or did you like really try?" So that was a really fun conversation. But it gives them an opportunity to familiarize themselves with the rubric, right? Because they're using the rubric to score my work. And then also it just sort of sets this expectation of like, okay, this is what we read each other's writing, we comment on each other's writing, we're kind to each other about each other's writing. And then again, that's part of that relationship building. So that was our very first essay. And again, that was assigned pretty quickly. We were talking about it on the first day of school. They had a little bit of time in class to write it. And then pretty quickly we moved beyond that. And so the very first unit in senior English is college essays. And so this is a super specific genre of writing. And if you don't teach seniors, there's lots of possibilities of things to do instead. I like that the college essay is really short, so it requires them to be super concise and use their words really wisely. They have to be very precise. They need to use vivid detail, and they have to show more than they tell, right? They have to kind of capture who they are. And so I like to think of it as like this writing pressure cooker. I love that it's one of the first things we do in the school year because it just requires them to beef up their skills very, very quickly. And so this is what we've been working on the last month. They've just turned their college essays in. I'm grading them right now. And so this is how we got there. So I tried to lure you all in by talking about mentor texts. But basically, I just very, very thoughtfully and specifically chose certain stories, certain texts to teach specific skills. I'm going to show you a handout in just a second that has all of these on there. And so I'm not going to talk anything about these specifically. You may know about them, and obviously you can read. But I just thought, okay, what do my students need to be able to do in the college essay? And what are pieces of writing that I know about or that I can find online that are going to model that we can always go back to? We can say, remember in Indian education when? Do you remember in the danger of a single story when? Do you remember in the really bad essays? Do you remember in the really exemplary essays? And so it just sort of sets up, we're all speaking the same language. We've all been exposed to the same text. It just gives us such a clear idea of like what's expected and what we're going to be moving towards. And so this year I gave them sort of a do's and don'ts sheet. And I liked doing this because it gave them, I'm going to go ahead and just open it for us so we can take a look-see. So this part was blank when they received this. But I went ahead and linked everything for you guys, and you have access to this. You can definitely go through and see what works for you, what doesn't. And I linked a couple of like little freebies for you also. If you wanted to, teach these, there's just some materials to go with it because I want to hear from you and I want to hear what you think. So basically there's a couple things about this that worked really, really well. First of all, the students knew where we were heading in the unit. They knew okay, once we read Miss Tinch's first draft, we're really close. Once we read Ms. Tinch's second draft, like that's it. We're about to turn our essay in. And so I've actually never done this before, but it worked so well. We were all speaking the same language. I had this printed out for them. I printed it on like a piece of colored paper so that they, could find it in their folder really easily. And I have absolutely no regrets about this. I felt like it gave so much structure to the unit. Again, like it's just like a list of everything that we've learned. And so every time we would pull that out, it was really sweet to see students like going back and thinking about what they had learned and what each text had taught them. And so on top of that, not only did all these texts teach them something, some of them required them to use the rubric. And so the first bad example we used was European vacation. And this was the first time they ever had to use the rubric, which is linked up there if you want to take a look at it. And so they had to give it a score. And I'll just scroll down to what I had them do. It's going to load. And so they just had to award points based on all these things. So notice these are all the categories. So using some of these is not necessarily a standard, right? Like there's no standard that says you must write authentically. But I just sort of put the standards in language that matched up with the genre we're writing in, which is college essays. And so these were things that we were talking about every single day. And it was so exciting to have a shared language from using these pieces. So again, like feel free to use these. I do feel like I should give you a trigger warning about some things about that day, which is very, very powerfully written, but that does deal with a main character who chooses abortion. And so I think that we had one of the discussion questions is, do you think the story is pro-life or pro-choice or neither? And we all decidedly said that it's neither. It's much more about her experience, but your students, your building, your community, and that may not be appropriate for what you're doing. I am very careful about my politics in the classroom, and I felt really comfortable teaching if it makes you feel a little bit more comfortable. And it also set us up to talk about like, hey, on a college essay, you shouldn't talk about topics that are potentially politically charged that might cause someone to have a bias against you. So again, I felt very comfortable with that. My principal was supportive, but I do feel like I should just point that out to you. Everything may not be totally usable for you. Okay, so that's the do's and don'ts sheet, which again was very helpful, successful for me, and it's linked there. Please feel free to use it. So I still have some problems, even if you're like sitting there and you're like, wow, she did a great job. Like, I bet all their college essays are great. They're not. The process was not like at all smooth. So I'm finding most of my students need a lot of feedback and help along through the writing process. So it may be a COVID thing. It may be like a teenagers wanting praise and attention from adults, which is a good thing, right? Like, of course, they want praise and attention. That's like very normal. It's good that they want that. But I'm finding a lot of my students needed some help through the process. Just wanted to chat. Like, what should I write about? Would this be good? Would this be good? And so, like, again, that's not really a problem to have. Like, it's not a terrible problem, but I'm hoping in our next unit they're going to be more independent and won't require so much like individualized attention because it's just not. Some of my classes have 32 kids, and so that's really hard to give everybody that kind of attention. Okay. Peer review is not part of this process, and I like peer review, but just there wasn't a place for it here. And so that was a problem that I have not solved in this unit. And then obviously they did not have to integrate any outside sources, which is a huge part of college level writings, right? So thus far, the writing that we've done hasn't really pushed them in that direction. I like what we're doing. I like the sort of pressure cooker. I like the rubrics that I'm able to design, but I still think we have places to go. And so our next paper, I just want to show this to you because of the college essay do's and don'ts list is like really specific genre. And so I just wanted to show you this in case you are not teaching seniors and you want to see like, okay, how could I do sort of that? Like, this is the list of everything we're going to read. And we just make little notes. And so our next paper is a unit on the South. And the paper question that they're going to be answering is, what does Southern literature say it means to be a Southerner? And then what do you say? So it's sort of like a literary, cultural, or literary and character analysis, but also a cultural context analysis. And so for this unit, I've given students this to-do list. It's not a to-do list. We're working through all of this together, but it has all of our readings, articles, and short stories, and then the novels that they can choose from. And essentially, they're just making notes as we go so that they have material once it comes time to do their essay. And so, again, I'm really excited about this do's and don'ts using text as mentors for writing. And again, this one has more of like a literary analysis approach rather than I'm copying the skills that this person used. But I'm pretty excited about the implications and where we're heading. So I just wanted to show you that in case you are not teaching a specific genre like college essays, and just wanted an application for you. Okay, so I just want to encourage you. Obviously, you're at KRA, you are trying so hard to learn and be the best that you can for yourself and for your students. And that is really hard and really important work. And so I just want to commend you for using your time to learn in this way and possibly even to present and be a part of this community. I hate that I'm not there in person, part of the community. So I put my email here again because I'm begging you. Not really, but I would love to hear from you. I don't want to just be sharing my rubrics into the void. So it would be wonderful to hear from you and swap ideas, get a conversation going. So I hope you guys have a great weekend, safe travels if you had to travel, and hopefully I'll see you soon.